journey early human species undertook in order to colonize the Earth has always been one that has fascinated me. This was not a linear path. It consisted of different species reaching different places at different times. Sometimes the pioneers were overtaken by others. Sometimes travelers simply stopped and settled when geographic obstacles at the time meant they could push no further on. Then thousands of years later, these obstacles would no longer be there, so another group may have went further. My point here is our expansion is a tangled web of thousands of years in the making, and it is interesting to try and understand at least some of it. The groups that made it to the furthest corners of the world were experiencing what no other human had at the time, whether it was undiscovered landscapes, plants, or animals. I've covered one of these groups in my video detailing the first American settlers, so today I would like to cover a much less spoken about population. These are the first Australians. Just before we continue, I was looking at my analytics and can see a tiny fraction of people who watch my videos are subscribed, so I would like to ask anyone who enjoys these videos if you could subscribe and possibly leave a like, as it would be very much appreciated by me. Thank you. The arrival of the first humans in Australia is a fascinating and complex topic that spans tens of thousands of years. For many years, it was believed that the first humans arrived on the continent around 60,000 years ago, but recent discoveries have pushed that timeline back even further. In this video, we will explore the history of the first humans in Australia, including their origins, migration patterns, and cultural practices. The first peoples to arrive in Australia were members of the Homo sapiens species. These early humans likely originated in Africa around 200,000 years ago. Over the course of millennia, they gradually migrated out of Africa and into other parts of the world, including Asia and Europe. It is believed that a group of humans left Africa around 70,000 years ago and began to migrate eastward throughout Asia. Australia was probably occupied by humans by at least 50,000 years ago, at a time when lower sea levels created a land bridge between Australia and neighbouring New Guinea, and when the region was separated from the Eurasian landmass by only narrow straits such as Wallace's Line. Australia's archaeological record, however, remains mysterious. To begin with, Australia harbours among the oldest modern human fossils outside Africa, dating to around 46,000 years, despite the large geographic distance from the African birthplace of mankind. Once the first humans arrived in Australia, they began to spread out across the continent. This migration likely took place over thousands of years, with different groups of humans travelling to different parts of the continent. Archaeological evidence suggests that the first humans primarily lived along the coastlines and rivers of Australia, where food and water were more abundant. Over time, these early humans developed sophisticated hunting and gathering techniques, using tools and weapons made from stone, bone, and wood. Stone tools in Australia, as in other parts of the world, changed and developed through time. Some early types, such as wasted blades, core tools, large flake scrapers, and split pebble choppers, continue to be made and used right up to this day. About 6,000 years ago, new and specialised tools such as points, backed blades, and thumbnail scrapers became common. Significant variation between the toolkits of different regions also appeared. prototypes for this technology appeared earlier in Asia, suggesting that this innovation was introduced into Australia. The ground stone technique produces tools with a more durable and even edge, although not as sharp as a chipped tool. The oldest ground stone tools appear in Australia about 10,000 years before they appeared in Europe, suggesting that early Australians were more technologically advanced in some of their tool manufacturing techniques than was traditionally taught. Aboriginal peoples hunted wild animals, gathered plants, fished and collected shellfish. They moved often to find new sources of food. How often people moved usually depended on how fertile their territory was. In desert areas, a band of Aboriginal people might move almost every day to find food. In areas with more abundant plant and animal life, such as the south and east along the coast, a band could stay in the same place for several months. Aboriginal peoples had a strict division of labour. Hunting and fishing were men's work. Gathering shellfish and plants for food was women's work. Hunting trips might last several days and they were not always successful. The favourite animals for hunting were kangaroos and wallabies. Coastal Aboriginal people also hunted seals. Hunters needed to be good trackers and to have detailed knowledge of animal behaviour. They were experts at imitating the cries of wild animals and birds to attract them close enough to kill. Men never talked to one another when hunting. They used touch and sign language to communicate without making a sound. Aboriginal hunters smeared their body with soil to disguise their smell. They also used spears to kill most animals, but relied on boomerangs to kill birds. The oldest human remains in Australia were found at Lake Mungo in southwest New South Wales, part of the Willandra Lake system. This site has been occupied by Aboriginal peoples from at least 47,000 years ago to the present. This age range is supported by numerous geochronological aging techniques such as radiocarbon dating. Lake Mungo has been devoid of water for at least 18,000 years and is now a dry lakebed. In the past, lower evaporation and higher runoff from the Great Dividing Range allowed the lakes to fill, supporting plentiful freshwater resources such as fish and shellfish, and making the lakes a valuable source of food for the people that occupied the area. In 2001, Australian scientists claimed that they had extracted mitochondrial DNA from Mungo Man and 9 other ancient Australians. They concluded that the genes of the modern-looking Mungo Man were different from modern humans, proving that not all Homo sapiens have the same recent ancestor as stated in the Out of Africa theory. These claims are controversial and could not be replicated in further studies in 2016, and the only DNA that could be recovered from Mungo Man was European and certainly a contaminant. Ancient DNA is easily contaminated and rarely survives for 30,000 years in conditions like those found in Australia. A complete mitochondrial genome from WLH4 found several kilometers from Mungo Man has been reconstructed. This individual was probably buried after the lakes had dried up in the Holocene, which was less than 10,000 years ago, and contains DNA that falls within the modern human range. As the population of humans in Australia grew, they began to develop distinct cultural practices and traditions, which varied depending on the region and the specific group of humans. These cultural practices included art, music, dance, and storytelling, which were passed down through generations. The indigenous people of Australia have a unique and complex culture that has evolved over tens of thousands of years. One of the most notable cultural practices of the first humans in Australia was their use of art. Aboriginal Australians created intricate rock paintings and engravings which depicted animals, plants, and other aspects of their environment. These paintings often had religious or spiritual significance and were used in ceremonies and rituals. Another important cultural practice of the first humans in Australia was their use of music and dance. Aboriginal Australians created a wide variety of music using instruments such as the didgeridoo, a long wooden wind instrument, and the clapstick, a percussion instrument. They also developed intricate dances that were used to tell stories and to convey important cultural messages. The first humans in Australia also had a rich tradition of storytelling, which were passed down through generations. These stories often had a spiritual or mythological component and were used to explain the origins of the world and the natural environment, and these are known as the Dreamtime. The Dreamtime is a commonly used term for describing important features of Aboriginal spiritual beliefs and existence. Aboriginals believe that the Dreamtime was way back at the very beginning. The land and the people were created by the spirits. They made the rivers, streams, waterholes, the land, hills, rocks, plants, and animals. It is believed that the spirits gave them their hunting tools and each tribe its land, their totems, and their dreaming. Some elements differ based on the area a population comes from, but the overall conception is the same. The arrival of the first humans in Australia is a complex and fascinating topic that has been the subject of much research and study. These early pioneers paved the way for all future Australians. Despite the many challenges faced by the Indigenous people of Australia over the centuries, their culture and traditions have endured, and they continue to be an important part of the country's identity and heritage to this very day.